Hey everyone, and welcome back to Project Pro's YouTube channel. Today we're diving into a topic that's crucial for anyone preparing for a data-related interview, and that is SQL interview questions and answers. Now I know that these technical interviews can be very daunting, but if you are well prepared, they can be a great opportunity to showcase your expertise. In today's video, we're going to tackle a curated list of 12 most commonly asked SQL questions, each designed to evaluate your ability to work with databases and write efficient queries. Let's get straight into it. So the very first question you might be getting is, tell me about your SQL experience, as the interviewers want to gauge your familiarity with the database language, as well as a rough idea of your technical expertise. So your response could be something like, I've worked heavily with SQL across the last 2 years working as a data analyst in the customer team at Microsoft. SQL is the primary language that we use to extract and manipulate the data from the data warehouses. I do all my exploratory data analysis and preparation within SQL before I then export the data into Python to then build my predictive models. So overall, I would say I'm very confident using SQL. I use a range of functions like left joins, window functions, and aggregations. And I'm also familiar with a bunch of different SQL dialects. Right now, I'm using MySQL. In terms of my growth mindset, I am also always looking for ways to improve my SQL skills, as well as the efficiency of my code, and I have completed many online courses. So yeah, overall, I would say I'm very confident with SQL. Now, the second question you might be getting is, what do you know about the ETL process? Now, this is for interviewers to test your knowledge of the entire data analysis workflow. So an example response could be, yes, the ETL process is a very fundamental part of my workflow. So the E stands for extract. So here the raw data is sourced from various places. This can include databases, APIs, or even manual CSV files. And the primary objective here is to retrieve the relevant data required. Now we move into the T section, which stands for transform. So once the data is extracted, it needs to undergo some transformations to ensure data consistency and accuracy. Now this could involve like normalization of your data, formatting it, or even just handling some missing values. And lastly, we have the L, which stands for load. And this is when you're basically loading your data into a data warehouse for users to consume. So overall, the ETL process is extremely important as it ensures data consistency and quality, as well as just accessibility for everyone to use in their daily analysis. Moving to the third question, you might get asked, what are the different types of joins? So expect this one to come up because joins are such a crucial part of data analysis, as it allows users to combine data from multiple sources to extract meaningful insights. So firstly, we have a left join, which is the one that I use the most commonly. So this returns all the rows from the first table and any matching rows from the second table. And if there's no match, then the result will just contain null values. A right join is similar to a left join, except it returns all the rows from the second table and only returns the matching records from the very first table. So next we have an inner join, which is kind of like the overlap, so it only returns rows where there is a matching value in both tables. And the last two joins I don't commonly use. There is a self join, which is basically joining on the same table. This is very handy when you want to compare records within the same table, maybe it's ordered by date. And lastly, there is a full join, which returns all the rows from both tables, and this is used when you want to include all available data from both tables. But I would say that my most commonly used joins are either the left join or the inner join. Moving on to question 4, what are some common statements used within SQL? Now this is for the interviewer to test your technical expertise and have you actually coded in SQL. So if you are familiar, you should know there is a select statement, which selects which columns you want to be displayed in the final output. There is the from statement, which defines which tables you are selecting from. Any joins would happen next. Now this is required if you want to combine columns from multiple tables into one. We also have a where function, which allows you to filter on conditions like where employee is greater than 35 years of age. Next, you have your order by statement, which allows you to sort your final output by a particular column. So in this example, it could be sorting by age descending. There is also the having condition, which basically allows you to filter on aggregate conditions. As an example, having minimum age is greater than 10. And lastly, there is the limit statement, which restricts certain rows of output. I often use like limit 10 to just say the top 10 rows of my query. So moving on to the next question, what is the difference between a table and a view? So a table is a physical database object that stores data in a structured format with rows and columns. This one is actually used for data storage to be stored permanently, and it supports operations like inserting, updating, deleting, and selecting from the particular table. On the other hand, a view is a virtual table based on a particular query's result. It takes very little space to store because it doesn't actually exist as a table. A view is great because it kind of hides the complexity of your data, and it can be a great temporary table or interim table used in particular calculations. And it's also beneficial for security purposes, as the view itself can be made accessible to a bunch of users, but the underlying tables are actually not directly accessible. Moving on to the next question, how do indexes affect the performance of a query? Now, this is a question I've been asked in multiple interviews. So you can say that indexes are used to improve the performance of your queries by allowing for faster data retrieval. So what it does is it basically creates a separate data structure that stores the values of one or more columns and allows for faster access to the data based on those particular values. Now, this is especially efficient for large databases where they significantly enhance query performance. But it's also really important to note to only create indexes on columns that will be frequently searched against, as maintaining an index can be very costly. Now, moving on to some more technicalities, what aggregate functions do you know? Here is when you can kind of show off and list all the different functions you've used. As an example, the average function returns the average value, the sum returns the sum of the values, you have your minimum and your maximum. Count, I often use count distinct to check how many distinct IDs are in a particular table. This will return the number of rows. There is also the first and last, which returns the very first and last value from a column. Another question you might get is, what are some character manipulation functions? These are a little bit more technical, so feel free to look into them if you're unsure of what these mean. The concat function is basically Excel's concatenate, and it joins two or more string values together. It appends the second one to the first one. There's also the substring function, which returns any part of a string if you give it the start and end points. There's also the length function, which, as the name would suggest, returns the length of a string, including any blank spaces. And lastly, there is the replace function, which replaces all occurrences of a particular string in a bigger string. As an example, if you want to replace all cases where the letter he is used and replace it with she. Now we've got around 4 questions which actually practice our SQL query writing skills. So the first one could be, write a SQL query that selects all employees whose name starts with M. So here we are selecting everything from our table employees, where the uppercase of the column name is like M with a percentage sign after it, which basically indicates a wildcard, so anything after the M would be included. So this way you're guaranteed to pick up any name that starts with the letter M. Another question you might get is, identify all the duplicate emails from the employees table. So here you are selecting email and you're renaming that column as duplicate emails from the table employees. We're also grouping by email and then counting how many of these emails appear more than once and filtering out any duplicates using the having statement. So having count greater than 1 should be able to pick up any duplicate emails. Moving on to another question you might get is, write a query to retrieve the minimum and maximum salaries from a particular table. So in this case, you are using your minimum and maximum aggregate functions. Select min salary, max salary from employee salaries. This one should be pretty straightforward. The interviewer is just testing your ability to use these aggregate functions. And lastly, you might be asked to retrieve the third highest salary from the employee salaries table. So in this case, you are using a CTE or common table expression, which is basically a temporary result set within a query that you can reference anytime. So within this CTE, we are using a select statement to retrieve the salary column from the table. And additionally, we are using a row number function, which is applied. In this case, it's just ordering every single row by salary in descending order. So the highest salary will be given row number 1, and so on. Now that we've defined our CTE, we now move back into the main select statement, where we retrieve the salary column from the previously defined CTE, as well as apply a where clause to only have row number equal to 3, which is effectively retrieving the row with the third highest salary. So in summary, this query is assigning a row number to each salary in descending order, and then filters the results to select the salary corresponding to the third highest row number. Now, that is all that I have for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed this and got something out of it. Feel free to leave any questions down in the comments below, and make sure to go check out Project Pro. I will see you in my next video. Bye!